We posted a short about forgiveness. Obviously, a few people didn't really understand what we were trying to get at. So we can delve into it a little bit more and what we meant by saying that you need to understand in order to forgive.
Yeah. One of the things that we noticed was there was a lot of confusion about empathy and sympathy. So how would you kind of build on that?
What do you think is the main difference between sympathy and empathy?
I would say empathy is understanding why somebody has done what they've done, and you've put yourself in their shoes, as we said. And sympathy is more just feeling bad for the person. You know, you feel sympathetic towards someone. You know, you feel sympathy if someone has something bad happen to them. You know, you feel sympathetic to their emotions. Whereas with empathy, you're putting yourself in their position. With sympathy, you're just trying to understand their situation and not really do anything with it.
Yeah. So I think sympathy could be like for a child, if a child does something wrong, like, it's a kid, just let it go. Whereas empathy is more really trying to get into the issue and understand why it happened.
Yeah.
I think there also is a very major distinction that we need to make when we speak about this topic between the action and the person. When we're talking about a forgiving act. So when we talk about an action that someone's done, obviously the action is not okay. Whatever we're talking about, if someone's done something wrong, the action is never okay. Obviously, that's the whole problem. But then do we then say the person is not okay? Do we discard of the person?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Because we always have to fight for what is right and what is wrong. But we can't just discard of people because they've done something wrong. I mean, we've all done things wrong in our life.
No person can claim they've managed to live an entire life without doing something wrong to themselves, to somebody else. It's impossible. You can't do that.
Because some people seem to think that just because we're talking about forgiving someone and understanding someone, we're saying the action is okay. Of course not. We always have to remember about right and wrong. But what we are saying is separate them. And we have to analyze it. So the first thing is like, what caused the person to do this?
Could be 1,000,001 different things as well.
Let's use an example that some people might use, which is they were born this way.
So rather than saying they had become that way, that's just how they were from day one.
So if someone's born that way, it sort of gives us like this moral obligation that we have to help them, because if we don't help them and we're saying they were born that way, we're saying basically then anyone can be born that way and it's going to keep happening because they're born that way. So if we don't take this moral obligation to help these people, then they're just going to keep being born that way. We're going to keep having the same problems and it will never end.
No, because you're not getting to the understanding of that person. Again, person and action. Like, if someone is born that way, you're basically saying that whatever action they take after birth, you can't really blame them for it. So it's like shoving it under the carpet. It didn't happen. You're justifying it, but you're not understanding it at all.
Yeah. And then if we take it to the other direction, and then we say, well, it's in our hands. We don't say someone did something bad because they were born that way. We say, well, it's in our hands. Is it that you had good parents growing up? And they gave you a good understanding of what is right and what is wrong. So if we go down that road and you say, it's in our hands, I have a moral capacity, I know what is right and what is wrong, and you learned that from your parents, then what if someone else had your parents and you had the parents of someone who didn't teach that?
Then that would have a huge impact on it. Like if I was raised by your parents, you were raised by my parents, we might have been completely different people.
I think most of the time we have to go through things to also understand empathy.
Yeah, it's very hard to empathize with someone if you haven't had that experience as well.
When someone does something to us, then we also understand that we wouldn't want to do it to someone else. So this is an experience that's given you this moral compass that we talk about. You have this moral compass that tells you what is right and what is wrong. And if it happened because something happened to you, well, what if we take that experience away from you and we give it to someone else? Then they would have had that moral compass. I mean, also sometimes people go through things and they don't learn from it, they become hateful.
Yeah, but these are all factors that play into it.
Well, this is exactly what we're trying to get across, is that all these reasons why someone has become a good person or become a bad person, all the guidance that we have, the environment that we grow up in, the people that have taught us, where we learn from, you could always substitute these. You could lose them. So, people are saying like, I wouldn't do that. Well, why do you think that you wouldn't do that? This mentality of yours that you say, I wouldn't do that, where did that come from?
I don't know, or was it something that you learned throughout time because of your experiences with other people?
Exactly, and if we're talking about experiences, then anyone could have had those experiences.
Yeah,
and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So this action that you've marked as unforgivable could have been your action as well, under different circumstances.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to say, no, I wouldn't have acted that way. But we've just gone through those scenarios. It's like you wouldn't have acted that way because of a certain person that guided you. Well, what is it? You can't just say, well, I'm just a superior human being. You can't just say that.
You can't know how you would react in that situation.
Exactly.
You haven't been in that situation.
If you went through everything this other person went through in their entire life, which is what they went through, then obviously you would have made the same decision. Because what is different between you and them? Are you not both human beings? Are you somehow superior to them? Like, why do you think that you wouldn't have done what they did? For what reason do you think that?
Because you want to believe that you're better than that. Have you seen what I mean? You want to believe that you wouldn't have done the same thing in that circumstance.
Yeah, you want to believe.
You want to believe. You can't know that it's true, but you want to believe that you would have done better.
Maybe you say, I had a better upbringing. Well, then again, it's just this endless loop. You had a good upbringing. Well, let's take that upbringing and give it to someone else. And then let's give you their upbringing. So again, you would have done what they did. It's just this endless loop. How can you justify you being a better person than them?
This ties in quite well with, you know, what we're saying about forgiveness, though. You can't forgive someone until you fully understand what they did wrong, right?
I think it goes back to also understanding that we're all the same, we're all human. If you don't have this mentality of we're all the same, what are you going to say? Like, he did that because he's Australian and I'm American. Like, then we're getting into areas that we don't want to get into.
No, once you have the inherent idea that people are just people, regardless of any factors that people play into it, you realize it's a lot easier to understand people as well.
This is the question of, okay, well, what happens when we don't forgive? When we say that we shouldn't forgive someone? Well, then it kind of leads to a scenario where there's always going to be a group of people on this earth that we should exclude. Because at the end of the day, if you're saying we shouldn't forgive them because they hurt you or hurt someone else, then I can come in and say, oh, let's go with what you're saying. You're correct. We shouldn't forgive them. I'm not going to forgive them either. And then I'm like, hey, Connor, this person, we shouldn't forgive them because they hurt John. And then you're going to say, you know, to your wife, let's not forgive John. He hurt this person. And then it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. And then the guy can say, no, well, hold on, but he hurt me. He didn't hurt you. You can be okay with him. Okay, but he could have hurt me. Just as he hurt you, he could have hurt me. So I'm going to go with your opinion. I'm not going to forgive him. And then I'm going to convince everyone else to do the same. So we just exclude this person from society? Or is it that he's just not worthy of your forgiveness? It's your forgiveness that he's not worthy of.
In that situation, he's only hurt you. But then the perception around him has completely changed. Because you've now encouraged other people not to forgive him for something that he didn't even do to them.
Yeah, but he could have
done it to them, yeah. I mean, under different circumstances, he could have done the same thing to them.
I like to think that we have to act as if the whole world was to act like us, the world would be a better place. So if I decide that one group of people is bad, and I'm going to say I want the whole world to take my stand, well, what's going to happen to this group of people? No one's going to love them. No one's going to care about them. No. If I say we shouldn't forgive this one person and the whole world takes my stand, then no one's going to forgive this person. So I always think, what if the whole world takes your stand? Let's say you're correct. We're not going to forgive this person. Let the whole world take your stand. What happens then?
Nobody's forgiving anyone for anything. Because your mindset is don't forgive people. As soon as that's amplified to everybody else, nobody's forgiving anyone for anything.
Exactly. It leads to very bad places.
Very bad places.
It leads to division. And this mindset of not forgiving, of basically condemning someone, is the same mindset. The roots of this mindset is the same mindset that has led to all the bad things that have happened in this world. So the very same things that you're saying, I don't forgive this person because they did this, you want to get rid of that? Well, your mindset is not going to get rid of that. If anything, it's going to make it keep happening.
That's not a world anybody wants to live in, is it? Like, you wouldn't want to live in that world.
Yeah, it's like you can put out a fire, but if you don't check what caused that fire, you may very well have another one soon. And if you ignore the fire, then it may burn someone else too.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do? Have to check what caused the fire. So if we want to understand what I'm talking about the worst examples. I'm talking about the worst examples of things that people have done. I'm talking about understanding them. We spoke about this in the last podcast, that if you want someone to come fix your air conditioner, you need someone who understands about air conditioners. So if you want to fix the worst people in the world, you need to understand about the worst people in the world. You need to understand the evil that is inside of them. You have to. And that happens through empathy. It doesn't happen through sympathy. It happens through empathy. Because we've been trying the other way. We've been putting people in prisons. We've been doing all of those things. We've been excluding, condemning.
The only way to truly eradicate like an evil is to understand the evil.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You can't eradicate evil unless you acknowledge the fact that evil exists in yourself, but also in everybody else.
We must empathize, not sympathize, so that we can understand it, so that then we can fix it. It's the only way.